So for this Sandbox episode, we're excited to talk to somebody who knows his stuff. We're talking to a graphic designer and marketer, training manager with Astute Graphics, and instructor with Kelby One. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the extremely talented, extremely knowledgeable Dave Clayton.
Thank you very much. Hello, chaps. Nice to be here.
It feels like the first time.
Yeah, it feels like the very first time. So, Dave, before we jump into any of like the deep questions or anything like that, just give everybody the Wikipedia page about who you are and what you do.
Yep, I'm Dave Clayton. You gave me a lovely intro, so that was good. 52, married, got 4 kids. I live in Swindon in England. And background-wise, I call myself a graphic designer. I've been it for like 20 years of my life, but I've known I've got that thing in me since I was a kid. It's just taken me a long time to get where I want to be, because back in my day when I was a kid, which was born in 1965, we hadn't even been to the moon yet.
Whoa!
Yeah. So you kind of go the long way round, and you literally cut and paste. And you know, when I had fonts, they were letters cut out of newspapers in boxes. So yeah, wow. I'm lucky. I'm a generation that came through the introduction of computers, which massively changed my life. And then, then kind of keep trying to find my way into that world of graphic design, and desktop publishing came along, and managed to get into marketing, which seemed to be the best place for me to sort of learn my craft and become a graphic designer. And then as I'll speak to you through the episode, there's some things that sort of happened that, I couldn't have made happen if I tried. So yeah, that's kind of my up to now Wikipedia.
Yeah. And so we've gotten to know you a little bit through the Slack channel. You're part of the Slack community on the podcast, and when we were scheduling to have you on the show, came to realize that you worked with Kelby One for a while, and I have a good friend who worked for Kelby One, and come to find out we know the same guy. So So our friend Adrian, what was your level of work with him, and how did you get to know him, and what was your what did you guys do together? Because he's not over in England, he's in the States. No. So how did you guys interact?
He was part of the video team at Kelby One, and when I first started with them, I was just I was a member. I just bought the magazine and watched the tutorials and the webcasts they used to do. And through a long story I'm sure we'll get into in a bit, is I ended up going over there and recording classes. And Adrian was part of the whole video team at Kelby. And the things with Kelby One is, unlike lynda.com and Skillshare and all these others, the thing that's good about them is they're a community. And when you go into that building, they welcome you like family. Sure. And you get introduced to everyone, and they all come over, and it's cool that you're English because everyone wants to know you. But yeah,
you're a novelty.
yeah, that's it. And you do become you become like the court jester a little bit, which can be very frustrating when like everybody asks you like, "Hey, do you know John from London?" It's like, yeah, of course I do.
Say this word. How do you say this in English?
Yeah. Oh, you spell that funny. So I got to meet Adrian, and I got to meet some of his colleagues, and I've been back over there a couple of times. Sadly, he's not there anymore, but we keep in touch on social media. So yeah, and that's the weird thing about this industry I've found over the past sort of 5 or 6 years, is like everyone's connected some way. My boss jokes that he says like, you're Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees of, everyone's only like so many degrees from Kevin Bacon, and he says like, I'm the Kevin Bacon of his world, because we'll be talking about someone and I'll just go, oh yeah, I know him, oh yeah, I've met him, oh, I know him through him, and it's like, how do you know these people? It's just that's the marketing bit. That's just, you go to events, if you don't go and talk to people, if you don't listen to podcasts and join in on Slack channels, or email people, you're not going to get to know them. And everyone's like, for the most part, everyone's nice.
Yeah. Well, so that's a thing that And I think this is going to lead into one of the questions I wanted to ask you about Aaron Draplin. My voice is falling apart right now. But no,
it's almost like someone called that out earlier, but I can't remember who.
Well, he sounds emotional, doesn't he? Like just talking to me, it's really hitting.
You make me want to cry. Absolutely. Well, so we were talking to Matt Taylor. I think this is the first time we were talking, and he said that he got the sense that every artist in America lived in the same house in LA. And the idea was it just seemed like everyone knew each other, just a very, very small world within the community. And then certainly once you start talking, you just start piecing together all these connections. And I think for someone that, whether they're nervous or they're new or they've just never tried, it can seem like all these people are behind walls or they're off limits or they're like in another sphere that, you know, one day you'll get good enough that they'll send you your letter inviting you to the club or something. And that's not the way it is. I mean, if you just reach out to someone, then you have this entire community, this really close-knit kind of small world that's at your fingertips. And they all want to talk to you. So anybody listening, just make the step. But with Draplin, so we were talking before the show and how, you know, you liked his work. And so you reached out to the guy and then you took it. We'll pick up there. So he said that he may be willing to come out.
Yeah, and, I only discovered him like I discovered America. I only discovered Aaron a couple of years ago through a blog post, and it's one of those things like, why didn't I know about you before? And then you feel like you're not worthy of being in the community because, like, how do you not know this person? So I read this blog, thought he was brilliant. He collects, you know, tons of crap like I do. He loves the old stuff. I'm old, so I love retro because I am by nature of my date of birth. And so I started listening to some podcasts, reading up about him, and the more I saw about him, the more I loved his work ethic and his background. But he was like that. You look and think, this guy is so busy. Everyone must want a piece of him. I'm not going to get near him. You know, it's like you know, Rolling Stones. You love the Stones, but you never get near him. And so with him, I just started researching a bit and listened to his story and everything. And I just thought, you know, sod this. I'm going to email him. I'd love him to come to England. He doesn't look like he's got any plans. Sent him an email and just said, hey, love your work, discovered you, love the stuff you do. Would you come to England? Didn't think he'd reply. And he did pretty quick as well. And said, yeah, I came a couple of years ago. You make it happen, man. I'm there. And I was like, so I went back. Seriously? Yep. So we looked at Kickstarter and as a possibility. And then through a connection with Adobe, I mentioned to them that, you know, I said, I was chatting to Aaron Draplin the other day and he said he'll come over. And they were like, he'll come here. And I was like, yeah, he said he would. Are you sure? I'm like, I'll send you the emails if you want. So I asked Adobe and just said, would you cover it? Would you sponsor it? Didn't say anything to Aaron because I didn't want to like go in all guns blazing and be like someone who, because this is the thing with this industry is if you overpromise, the word gets around that you kind of, I know you're after free stuff or you're fake or whatever.
Yeah.
And mentioned it to Adobe. We had a little back and forth. Proved that he said he would come, and you know, really kindly by Adobe UK, they came back and said, "We'll finance it. We're going to put on a post Adobe Max event in London. He's going to be our headline act. We've got Dan Mumford as well,
nice,
who's going to be like
that's a good one too.
The support act, yeah. And so I went back to Aaron and said, "Look, I think I've got this covered. Are you definitely up for it?" We figured out a day and, you know, then handed it over to Adobe. They did all the contract stuff and everything. Sure. And like now he's coming over and I went and picked him up from Heathrow Airport and we got an Uber and we sat on the journey back to London and I'm just sat in the back of the car with Aaron Draplin.
Yeah.
And I actually stood at the airport. You know, they stand there with the boards with like Mr. Draplin. Mine said thick lines, dude.
Oh, I bet he loved that too.
Oh, yeah. So we sat in the car and we were chatting. He was telling me about, well, I like to say, he's great to listen to. I say great to chat to. He's great to listen to. And well, I got to spend the day with him. And he's just the loveliest guy. And we went for lunch and this was the seed. This is what I say about the industry, about, if anyone listening, don't be frightened to contact someone, because you don't know what that thing's going to do. And this whole thing was the seed that got me the job that I've got today.
Yeah.
Because Aaron came over. I'd already met the Astute guys at Adobe Max the month before, which was the first time I met. I actually went, just reversed a little bit.
Sure.
I went to Adobe Max after all this has been set up. I went to Adobe Max as a TA, and I knew Aaron would be there. And I said, look, let's meet at Max, get to know each other. Then when you come to London, you'll know who I am, and you'll trust me a little bit more.
Right.
Getting to know who I am.
Yeah.
And it was really cool because I saw him walk in with Lee, his girlfriend, and they went and registered. And all of a sudden, like Aaron is like, people swarm to him. And I'd never met the guy. And he looks up and he recognized me and he points and he waves at me. And it was just like,
yeah,
how cool is that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've come to my first Adobe Max. And that's where I met the Astute guys. They were there. And I told them the whole story about Aaron. And so cut back to the event with Aaron in London. He comes along. I've got this whole thing to happen with the help of Adobe. And guess who ends up managing his merch stand all night and missed the whole talk, missed Dan Mumford, missed everything, stood in the foyer, and I managed his merch stand and I sold all his gear for him, stood there all night. He was really appreciative. It was just like the best 3 days with him. And I had to leave and get the train. So I run off to the train station, and if I don't get this train, I'm stuck in London.
Yeah.
And I get to the train station and realise I've got all the money from the merch stand in my pocket. And now I'm thinking,
that's a good move.
I've just spent the best 3 days with him, and now he's going to think I'm this little thief from London.
That's a power move, bro.
elaborate.
I like that.
Scarfed with his money.
I like that.
So I ran all the way back. And I'm a big guy. I'm not a fast runner. I've done the London Marathon.
Oh, you literally ran all the way back.
I ran all the way back, and I ran in. I'm like, Aaron, I've got your money. And he just stood and looked at me, and I just handed in this wad of cash because, people couldn't get enough of his merch, and they're just handing over money like you wouldn't believe. And bless me, gave me a little bit of money to get a cab back to the train station.
Oh my gosh!
And it was really cool, and he was just so gracious. And,
yeah,
and it worked out really well because we sort of keep in touch. And I just saw him again at Adobe Max, and the hall's full, ready for him to do his class. And he just looks over at me, smiles, walks up through the crowd, comes in, leans in, shakes my hand, and goes back up to the stage. And it's like, of all the people in that room.
Yeah.
And he just did that really nice thing. And that meant a lot to me. That was probably like, of all that, that was the nicest thing, that someone like that just trusts you and
so
treats you like a friend.
Yeah. Okay. So, and it's because of those relationships, we're realizing this really quickly with you. You are the relationship guy. You're a connector guy. That's who you are. But that has led you now to Astute. So talk to us about what you're doing now with Astute and what that transition has been like for you. You mentioned something pre-record that I want to dig into. So I'll see if you say it here. If not, I'll prompt you later.
Okay.
But yeah, talk to us about Astute and what this new journey has been like for you.
Yeah, so like I said, the Astute graphics thing, I've kind of mostly been Photoshop all my life, and Illustrator's kind of been my mistress. It's like it's there on the side, and I dip in once. A little bit frustrating, but it's always there. And I kind of found out about Astute, and I tried to set them up with Kelby One to see if we could get some kind of thing going. It didn't happen. And then when I saw they were going to be at Adobe Max, I messaged them and said, look, I'm going to be there. Let's meet. And we had a mutual friend, a guy called Jesus Ramirez. And they've got this, we call him the graphic scientist, Sebastian Bleak. We agreed to go for breakfast and sat down, and I'm telling, I at no point, at this point, did I ever think this would lead to a job. This was just me meeting some really cool people. I'm from England, they're from England, we're in San Diego. So we had breakfast, and I relayed the Aaron Draplin story to Nick, and he was like, oh, I didn't realise you'd done that. How involved were you? So I showed him the emails and told him the story. And he was like, it's really cool. Then we had Adobe Max. We bumped into each other a few times, and then we knew we'd meet up again in London for the Aaron Draplin thing. And the guys came down, and bizarrely, he brought most of his staff to this event. So I get to meet all the staff, which was I thought he's a generous guy. He's brought them all down to London and putting them up for the night. So we do the event, and I did the merch stand and everything. Go home, said my goodbyes, and then about couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks later, I just got this email from Nick. Said, just want to say it's been a pleasure meeting you. Really impressed by your networking, your background, your history with Astute and everything. I've got this role that I want to fill, and although you haven't got necessarily all the experience of the role that I want you working for the company, and its role as a training manager. So I looked at the spec and I said to my wife, I don't think I'm qualified for this. But she said, well, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
So Dr. Pepper. And so I went back to him and said, look, let's have a chat. If this doesn't work out, let's just be friends anyway, because I love what you guys do. I'll promote you. And we had a really good chat, and I went into the office and we had like a 6-hour interview. Just say interview, it was just a chat. Halfway through,
yeah, exactly.
He's showing me his business plan, and Nick just goes, by the way, you've got the job, right? And and we hadn't even discussed salary. It was like, and I just went, yeah, absolutely. I'll say yes. And then we carried on talking, and I knew with my background, I knew with the industry what I wanted to do. I knew what I was capable of doing, and it's worked out really well because I've been there 9 months, and we've got Aaron Draplin using Astute. We've set up DKNG. We've got some huge customers like Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks. But what's been really nice, the nicest part of the job, is finding outlets, finding ways of, watching illustrators do stuff and then contact them and go, we've got a tool that would make that so much easier. But I don't do it like a window glazing salesman. I don't go in with like the hard sell. I'm like, look, I'm going to give you it. I'm just going to give you, you need this tool. I'm going to give you it. Say you get on with it. Contact me in a couple of months. There's no hard sell. Just want to help designers because, time's money, and that's the thing that the Astute tools do. So I'm kind of falling in love with Illustrator again, learning some really cool plugins and getting to sit and, like I say, listen to really cool podcasts. I mean, I'm finding people through your podcast. I'm finding people through the other podcasts, names I've never heard of. And Nick has said, I love that that's what you bring to the table is that we have a thing called Project Weasel, which he says, you're really good at weaseling in things. And I said, well, that sounds a bit harsh, but, but it's like, it's what I love doing. I like to think of myself as the facilitator, a bit like the Equalizer, but... So I like. Go on. Sorry.
Well, so this kind of segues a little bit. It connects with what you were saying off air, which is you call yourself a graphic designer, and that's what you have done, but you have now kind of shifted more to setting people up, like setting up other designers, connecting other people, resourcing other people. So it's a bit of a shift in mindset. And you've said that this maybe is more the place that you're intended to be. So what's that mindset shift for you?
I actually said the other day to someone, it must be like Keith Richards playing guitar for the Rolling Stones all his life and then becoming the band manager. Like, not playing guitar every day anymore, but like going off and finding another guitarist, or, stepping away from the thing that you love doing and then spending all your day watching people way better than you creating incredible artwork. And it's been, in the beginning, I really struggled because I love designing and I still get to work on a few things, but that's been the strangest part of it, is calling myself a graphic designer, putting myself in that world. I've worked for corporate companies and in IT and manufacturing. So I've had to do the single brand stuff and then do like my fun stuff on the side. And actually being asked to step away from that and then like doing this role I've never really done, it's not a role I've been paid to do before.
Sure.
But it's a role that comes naturally to me. It really feels quite odd not having the pressure of designing. I used to love the Scotty on Star Trek. You know, I need this and I need this now. How long's it going to take you? And you go, 2 hours, and then you deliver it in half an hour. And it just that pressure environment of being creative, like blank canvas, come up with something. So to not have that pressure has been it's a relief and a frustration.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the less I do, I won't be as good as I'd like to be.
Yeah.
So I now have to force myself to come up with projects to do.
Yeah.
Because I'm not designing 9 to 5. I mean, I'm just doing some like shortcut sheets in InDesign because background's desktop publishing. So InDesign was the tool that, I've always used. So I'm creating like 20 PDF shortcut sheets for the business because I still want to keep my hand in.
Yeah.
But, I'm seeing all this awesome artwork by these people, like we mentioned, Dan Mumford, some of the stuff he does, and Aaron's. And so I'm sort of learning to admire how good other people are and not beat myself up over like not being those people.
Yep.
Yeah. So I want to go back even farther. You said coming up in graphic design, it was totally different, right? It was all tactile. It was all paper. And so how is that transition to digital for you? Because now everything you do is digital. Your whole job is how to teach people to use these digital tools to do their job better. And you came from the analog part of that. How was that transition for you personally? Did you catch on pretty quick or was it a lot of work?
Yeah. It was, I mean, I used to, even both my girls now, my youngest daughter, she's 8, and she wants to sit in front of my Mac with my Wacom, with Illustrator open. Yeah. She's really good. But we do a lot of craft together. And, even in here, I've got like 3 huge plastic boxes of Sharpies and pens and pencils. Because, back when I was younger and I started, there were no computers, so there was nothing. You couldn't sit and think, if only I had a machine to do this. So I used to sit and cut letters out and cut people out and create collages and montage and lay all the fonts out. And I didn't know what the fonts were, but I knew what I liked and colours and everything.
Right.
So when I got to, we're looking at in my 20s, like the age you guys are now. I'm guessing you're all in your 20s.
No,
30.
Sure. No, let's go with that.
Yeah, 20 sound great.
Okay, all right.
I like that. Yeah.
But so I eventually ended up working for a print company. 1991, I joined a print company in a place called Hemel Hempstead, and they were a big international company, and they had the old proper printing presses, lithographic stuff.
Yep.
And which was fascinating, and it was the beginning of photocopiers. So we were a Toshiba dealer, and like the first color photocopier came out. Now, once I had photocopier, I was like, I used to make little booklets, football fanzines, and my older brother's in a rock and roll band, so I kept all his stuff and made these like pictures and posters and things. And it'd be like cut, paste, photocopy, add another layer, photocopy, and it was great. And in this job, I first discovered Quark Express and the first Apple Mac. And once I saw you could do it on a computer screen, I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
So then I used to get told off because I started designing like warranty forms and returns forms, like really boring stuff.
Yeah.
But I could use this computer, and then I got my first color computer there. And that was it. I was sold. Yeah. I was like, I still love the analog stuff, but I can do this more often now. What used to take me hours to make a poster, I can like do it very crappily basic, in the early days of software. But as I started to progress from that, the next job I joined, the guy downstairs had a computer with PaintShop Pro, and he showed me it, and I was like, wow, this is like wizardry. So after work, I used to go and sit downstairs on his computer, and I taught myself how to use Paint Shop Pro, and how I could use it to do what I wanted to do. And he gave me a photograph, and I learned a bit of retouching. And he said he was a Swedish guy. His son was in the Swedish army, and he had a photograph of a helicopter in the background, a red sports car in the foreground. His son stood in his uniform in between, and his son's girlfriend sat on the bonnet of the car. And he said, "He's not with her anymore. Can you take her out of the photograph?" Bearing in mind, she sat on the corner of the car, and part of her is on the windscreen. And I probably spent the best part of 3 weeks, and I completely removed her with the clone brush, cutting and pasting.
There you go.
And I gave him the picture back, and I won't repeat what he said when he realised what I'd done. Now, if I look back on that now, it would look like I did it on the back of a galloping horse at night. It's like
you are a word picture artist, my friend.
But I was sold. I was absolutely sold. And then by the time, I could get my hands on Photoshop, like everyone did back in the day. I'm not saying how, but we all did.
Yeah.
I got to play with Photoshop, and then that was it. It was a love affair.
I just have this. I'm going to be. I know I'm way off on this, but I feel like when we're talking about the early Photoshop, there's 10 actions you can perform, as opposed to now. If I'm brand new to the world and I boot it up, there's seemingly endless things I can do. If you've been transitioning with the software this whole time, does that mean over time it's been an easier learning curve, or do you still feel like it's a bit daunting?
I've actually started to, is the word regress. I've started to go backwards now, because it's got to the point where you sit at Adobe Max and they introduce Adobe Sensei, which is Adobe Sensei, just think it and we'll do it.
Right.
And it's this technology is just, I think it's taking a little bit of the, I don't like it when it does too much for you, because the thing that I've always said what I love about what I do is a blank canvas.
Sure.
Photography's cool. I love photography. But the thing with photography is it's like fishing. You spend hours sat out waiting for the big fish. And then it's done. And then you've got to go and do the next big fish. And so you end up retouching and retouching and retouching. But you start with a thing. You take the photograph, you put it in Photoshop, you start with a thing. Sure. I like starting with nothing other than an idea or a spec. So it still goes back to the analog. You still sit and sketch and, these things.
Yeah.
You sit writing and drawing and coming up with ideas before I go into the computer. Now Adobe have created all these new things, and, even Astute Graphics, some of the things we do, takes all that pain out of it. But I think it's very easy to fall down a hole of everything looks the same. Because, you remember back in the early days of Photoshop, bevel and emboss, drop shadow, gradients, everything looked the same. And now where design is, where what I call Photoshop graphic design is, now they give you templates. Everything's kind of the danger of looking samey. So I've gone back, and through going back to Aaron Draplin, a really interesting thing about him that I'm doing a talk at Photoshop World about. It's the first time I ever saw him, and I'm telling this when I speak to him, is he was standing in front of his bookshelf in his office. And the first time I saw him, my instant reaction was, will you get out of the way of that bookshelf? I want to see what's behind you. And I took a snapshot of his bookshelf. Yeah. And I thought, right, I love what this guy does. And he's got a shelf full of books of interesting stuff. I'm going to have a look, and I'm going to start getting these books. And through that, I started discovering people like Herb Lubalin, Paul Asher, Pentagram. Again, all these people I should have known about. And because I didn't go to university, I didn't go to college, I've got no qualifications in it. I just come into the world and found my way. Through him, through his bookshelf, I've discovered these artists who created things back in the day pre-computer. And you start looking through, and and seeing how they came up with these ideas, and it was all hand drawn and paper and pen. It was all original ideas. So I'm kind of going backwards now. I love all the screen printing side, all these designers that are creating artwork and screen printing it and producing like tactile. I love posters. I've got that from Adobe Max. That one's from Delicious Design League, and I've got some more that I ordered through Black Friday. So I've regressed. I've got to the point where I know what technology does.
Sure.
But I want to go back to how, getting your hands dirty again. And
more of a purist.
Thinking, I'm not snobby or anything. I'm like music. If I like it, if I hear it, I like it. It doesn't matter who it is.
No, it's good. I mean, I know on the website it's easier to do a similar thing in that there are some really great like UI toolkits that are available, and they can save you a lot of time. The downside is that if you just implement the same UI toolkit that another 30 people have implemented, now all your stuff looks the same with like a different color. And so it is finding the balance of the benefits of using this kind of boilerplate or this tool or this whatever, but balancing it and still finding the making the art within that. I'm going to go ahead and transition us to finals. I don't want to because I want to sit and talk with you for just hours. And so either we have to go over there or you have to come over here or something has to happen because...
It's probably a lot cheaper for him to just come over here.
And that's honestly probably a lot cheaper, but that needs to happen. But I'm going to go ahead and ask my final question. And because we want to respect your time, and you're in the middle of your workday, you've got to get to work, and I've got to actually go to work. So,
have you?
But my question: so you said at the beginning of the show you're 52 years old, and in the people that, what is it like being 52 years old in this group of people? Because it seems like the up and coming, the 20 somethings, the bleeding edge is always thought to be the younger crowd. And so what is it, just interacting with people, whether it's work related or your own design you produce, do you feel like that has to change your approach when you're building relationships or when you're making work?
Yeah, I think I get frustrated by how old I am because I don't feel it. And when I look back and think, should I have gone to university? Should I have gone to college? Should I've progressed this as an art and, and be a Johnny Cupcakes or a Shepherd Fairy but I think I'm quite lucky in I think personality goes a long way more than age, is that I've got experience. I've worked with young people. A lot of my friends are still quite young. I don't feel out of place when I talk to younger designers.
Yeah.
And the thing that I've started to do now, like teaching at Photoshop World next year, is that I'm doing a class called Get Inspired by Graphic Design. And I'll talk about, listening, watching, reading, discovering. And when I get a lot of people ask me this stuff about, well, how did you get started? Well, you didn't have computers. We've only got computers. It's great. I mean, I wish I was 20 years younger. I wish I was in my 20s like you guys.
Somewhere around there.
But I just think, it's funny because we moved house and I had to take out a mortgage, 23 years mortgage. So I've got to work till I'm 74.
Yeah.
And the guy at the bank said, so what makes you think you can work till you're 74? And I said, well, because the nature of my job is to be creative. If my brain works and these work, my hands, the software that we use and the hardware that we use and the technology that we have makes it easier for us to keep doing what we do.
Sure.
The fact that some guy can paint, draw the London landscape with his, with a pencil up his nose or whatever. People can be creative with pens between their toes and, Stephen Hawking's looking at the screen and it pulls the letters out. Technology is going to enable people to stay younger, longer, and enable them to do jobs like we do. You just find another way.
Yeah.
So, I hope, look at Clint Eastwood, he's 162 and he's still directing.
Right, solid director.
Yeah.
Yeah, Keith Richards, the Rolling Stones get up on stage and they're still the biggest rock and roll band in the world. So I just hope that over the years, as as technology changes and software changes, that the industry will still be open to older people for longer.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I know you guys know Adventures in Design, and it always makes me laugh when Mark Bricky keeps going on about, you know, I'm 40, I'm really old. And I'm like, man, my life began at 40. Up to the age of 40, I was, you know, kind of average. No, you wouldn't be talking to me 12 years ago. But I met my wife and had my kids, and I got introduced to Kelby One, and my life has changed massively over the last kind of 7 to 9 years.
Well, that and 12 years ago, Patrick was 12, so it wouldn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. I love being my age because of the experience and because I know like how to talk to people. Sure. And a bit of respect, and you know, and the Englishness is always great. Oh yeah, the English thing I was going to tell you.
Yeah,
I said at the beginning of the podcast, I'm going to drop a mic drop of Englishness on you. What's your favourite English film at Christmas time?
English film?
Christmas time?
Think of an English film that every American I speak to, they go, oh my God, I love this film. It's 2 words. And one of them's love.
Love Actually?
Love
is that
Actually?
what you're talking about?
So my dad is in Love Actually.
What? That's crazy.
Now, when you go to America and you're already English, and then people go, oh, I love English. I love the English accent. My favourite film is Love Actually. And then I go, just hold it right there. My dad's in Love Actually. And they're like, so
it perpetuates the stereotype that everybody in England, though. You realize you're part of the problem here. You're not part of the solution.
I know. So if you're listening and you love Love Actually, okay, imagine this. My dad went to Heathrow Airport with my mum, and they've got friends who live in just north of LA.
Okay.
And this guy's job was to deliver scripts to movie stars. So they're English, but they've lived out there for a while. And every other year, they come to us. My mum and dad goes to them. So my mum and dad are at Heathrow Airport, and they walk in, and they're stopped by someone and said, can you sign this waiver? Because we're filming in the airport for a new Hugh Grant film, and we're capturing footage of people in the airport. So my mum and dad are like, yeah, no problem. Signs it. Dad goes through with mum. Their friends, Jean and Eric, come through. My dad hugs Eric. They get their stuff and they go to the car. So it turns out, bizarrely, that my cousin, his friend, worked on the film in the editing. And the story had got back that Dad had been to the airport, and she contacts us and says, just edited the film. John is the guy with the white hair, isn't he? And his friend was in the red cap. And they go, yeah. She goes, he's in the film. So Love Actually comes out. I go to the cinema, watch the whole film. And right at the end, when everyone's like at the airport and Martine McCutcheon runs up and jumps on Hugh Grant and straddles him and gives him a kiss. And then there's a narrative and they start showing people at the airport. And there's like a little girl runs through. There's a lady. And then my dad appears on screen, hugs a guy in a red baseball cap.
Yeah.
My dad's face is there, and I stand up in the cinema and go, that's my dad!
I love that.
And it was the greatest. And when it came out on DVD, if you freeze it, you can actually see my mum as well. So my dad is like the 3rd or 4th person hugging in the airport scene.
In the montage.
At the end of Love Actually. Now, to me, that counts as my dad is in Love Actually, and I'm the son of a Hollywood movie star.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you actually like the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So...
All right. So let me ask you this. This will be my final question. You get around in the graphic design industry as stated by the stories you've shared just in these last few minutes. Who is maybe give us 2 names of people who you've seen as you've been doing some of these events that we need to be on the lookout for, like that are up and coming, not your DKNGs, not your Aaron Draplins, not these big names, but like who are some people who you see are on the cusp of doing some really, really great stuff?
Oh, that's a tough one. There's one guy who he's English. His name's Gordon Reed, or Middle Boop is his name. He's.
I'm sorry. What, can you say that last one more time?
No, I think we got it.
Middle Boop. Okay. He's really good. He's a really good designer, and I've got to know him over the last sort of year or so. He's got a lot of personality. He's from London. He's really good. I'd watch out for him. He's worked with some good clients. It's hard because there's another guy called Sam Gilby who is a bit like the Drew Struzan kind of poster art work. He's really good. I've started to see some of his work come through. It's just the thing. There's so many good people in the industry that I keep coming across through like Instagram or podcasts. It's like I don't really know where they are in that world yet. It's like I could go and say a name, and then it's like, oh yeah, we know Dan Mumford, or yeah, we know Sam. Who's the tailor?
Matt
guy
Taylor.
Matt Taylor.
Yeah.
I can't actually pick a couple. It's because every time I discover someone, it turns out you look further into it, and then they're quite big in their world. So, but yeah, I'd say check out Gordon. He's really good. I would have said Dan Mumford, but everyone knows him. Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't actually pick anybody that I think is up and coming, because I think everyone seems to be in a really good place at the moment.
Yeah, right, that's great.
I mean, that's cool. I'll do my final.
Gordon's stuff is good, by the way. I'm sitting, like, while you're talking, I'm sitting here going through his Behance. This dude is legit.
Yeah.
So my final is, if design was not a thing for you, if you didn't get into design, what's the other thing you would have done? Like, what would you be doing now if you weren't never in the design world?
If I wasn't in design, I would be in marketing. I've been some kind of person. Right, it's funny because you guys know Dustin Lee, Retro Supply.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What a good dude. He stole one of our tokens.
He's the guy who took the other token.
The wooden
that's our
food
missing
token.
one.
So I've been buying Dustin's stuff for years.
Yeah.
And we just got him to do a campaign with Astute Graphics. And I wanted to meet him. And again, it was like meeting you guys for the first time today. It's like, I know who you are. I listen to you. But when I meet you, it's quite... So I was quite nervous.
Disappointing. You could say it.
You realize now the nervousness was very unwarranted.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I shouldn't have been nervous at all.
But I had a Skype with him, and he was a little bit nervous because I think he was, he's protecting his brand and what he does, and he was worried about why I was coming to him from Astute. And once I kind of settled his nerves over who I was and my intentions, we chatted for like an hour and a half, mostly about running a business, how he runs his business. And sort of an hour in, he goes, I just want to stop you for a minute and say, you introduced yourself as a graphic designer at the beginning of this conversation. He says, you're not a graphic designer. You're a really good marketing person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a really nice compliment, because whenever I talk to anybody, I love the marketing side of it. I love how they run their business, how they promote themselves, how they do their email campaigns, how they do stuff on social media. So I think if you took design away from me, I'd just be the person that does your admin in the background.
Yeah.
Cool.
The marketing guy.
Yep.
All right. Well, so here's what I want to do before we jump out of here. And like Patrick said, we could talk for hours, but we just can't. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, how they can follow you, how they can support.
What's he laughing at?
Because it's just so
What is happening?
It's all falling apart. I'll tell you later, Dave.
We have a great story for you, but it's only for you.
But it's only for you, Dave, after this is done. Tell everybody where they can find you, where they can support what you're doing, and they can follow all of the goodness that you are a part of.
Okay, well, if you can support me and keep me in a job, please go to astutegraphics.com.
Yeah.
If you use Adobe Illustrator, trust me, we have got some tech coming next year that is going to rock people. It's really cool stuff. And then on social media, it's Dave Clayton, ITS Dave Clayton, because I couldn't get Dave Clayton.
Yeah, I love that, actually. It makes it really easy to find you because it's Dave Clayton. Yeah. It's kind of like how Andrew Kolb is neat, and you can easily track him down.
Or Dan Black is the fake Dan Black.
DaveClayton.com. It's Dave Clayton on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I haven't really got a proper website. I'm too lazy.
Awesome. Well, why don't you do this? Can you help us pick tokens so we know what we're going to be talking about next week?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. Well, that's it for the interview portion. Up next, we're going to draw some tokens. The tokens time every week is when we get to find out the exact categories we have to talk about, and then we pick our topics based on those categories. I have the tokens right here. They're very real, very real. I don't know what I was going to say. Real is
very authentic.
They're very plastic.
Very plastic, very much a thing. So I'm shuffling them up on my desk. Why don't you give me a number between 1 and 3, and you'll be picking for Patrick.
Oh, for Patrick, then I'm going to go number 3.
Number 3, you got toys and games, Patrick.
Hey!
All right, you go for pick 1 or 2, and you'll be picking for Luke.
I swear, art and design. Please, art and design.
Number 1.
TV and film.
Yeah.
That means that I have art and design. I got number 2. Yep, I did. I got number 2. So that's perfect. Dave, thank you so much for being on the show. If you're watching this and you want to see what he's doing, you want to see some of the stuff we talked about, look in the links below. If you're listening to this, go to mofonepodcast.com and find all the show notes and links there. You can find an archive with so many talented people. A lot of the people that Dave talked about in this episode, we've already talked to, and they're back in the archive. So go to mofonepodcast.com/archive to see that. Join the conversation. Dave is there in the Slack channel. Go to mofonepodcast.com/Slack. It's Dave Clayton.
Dave Clayton.
And you can find us on every social media platform. Just search M of One Podcast. Like and subscribe and share and do all of the things on Google Play, iTunes, YouTube, and then on Patreon you can help support the show. Go drop a couple bucks in the old proverbial bucket. Helps us continue to do what we do and continue to push forward. Yep. Go to patreon.com/M of One Podcast to help in that place. I think that's all for this episode, though. We're going to get out of here. I'm Andrew.
I'm Luke.
We've lost him, haven't we?
What's happening, Patrick? You need to hurry.
Man, I'm so unprofessional today. Patrick.
I'm Luke.
I'm Dave.
Peace out.
Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Hold on to your butts.